Up until the 2016 EU referendum, we didn't hear much from the EU Remainers. We didn't see them carrying their EU flags or making passionate speeches about being European, because they don't really care about that. As long as the European project of the EU goes strongly and we're part of it, they're happy. That's why they call us Brexiteers, nationalists and protectionists as a form of insult. Just because we want sovereignty for our country and we're in favour of self-determination for all countries in Europe. They call us anti-trade, even though it's us Brexiteers who want to leave the single market and the customs union so we're able to freely trade with the rest of the world. But they say we are trading with 27 countries in Europe. But these are all excuses. They don't really care about trade. In the name of free trade, they're pushing their agenda to have a United States of Europe, because they don't like democracy or sovereignty. Do you know how I know that? This is all thanks to the Trump visit to London earlier this week. The moment Trump suggested the potential trade talks between the UK and the US post-Brexit, they've all kicked off. They had all these allegations saying America wants to destroy our NHS, they want to give us the messed up chicken for some reason, and everything else.
The British government did this, and let's be clear about why they did it. They did it because they want a trade deal with the United States, which would mean opening up our national health service to US multinationals who are circling like vultures. It would mean a race to the bottom in workers' rights, consumer rights and environmental protection.
It should not be a debate about how we go forward with no deal at the same time as offering up our precious, wonderful national health service to private American companies to come in and take it over.
Now let's start with the NHS argument. It's all because Donald Trump, during the press conference with Theresa May, suggested that when it comes to trade talks with the UK and the US, everything's on the table. And people thought that obviously meant he wants to come and take our NHS away and sell it to the Cubans or something. I don't know what he wants to do with the NHS. What can you do with the NHS? Well, that's a different argument. Because he said this.
When you're dealing in trade, everything's on the table. So NHS or anything else, or a lot more than that. But everything will be on the table, absolutely.
But if you look back to seconds before he answered that question, you'll see that he didn't even know what the NHS was.
Mr. President, Francis Elliott from The Times, do you agree with your ambassador that the entire economy needs to be on the table in a future trade talk, a trade deal, including the NHS?
It's the National Health Service. He says, should the National Health Service be on the table?
And he also clarified his position when it came to his interview with Piers Morgan.
There's no leader, it seems to me, would allow Britain to effectively sell the NHS as part of a trade deal. Would you, as the American president, see that as a deal breaker if none of the NHS was on the table?
I don't see it being on the table. Somebody asked me a question today, and I say everything's up for negotiation, because everything is. But I don't see that being, that's something that I would not consider part of trade. That's not trade.
We even had one of the Conservative candidates for the leadership of the party, Matt Hancock, saying this in response. I have a clear message. The NHS is not for sale, and it will not be on the table in any future trade talks. Now, Trump is absolutely right. The whole NHS argument in terms of America potentially taking it away is nonsense. But in terms of private providers when it comes to medicine, they can already be involved, and they have already access if they want to make any bids in terms of NHS contracts. Under the current rules, there's nothing to stop American firms from bidding for NHS contracts. The health reforms in England in 2012 required the local commissioners to put large contracts out to tender. Around 7% of the English health budget goes to private providers. There are different contracting agreements in other parts of the UK, of course. So American firms, right now, under the current rules, can bid for contracts when it comes to the NHS. Now, if someone like Matt Hancock, who is supposed to be our Secretary of State for Health, doesn't know this, I'm really worried about the state of this country and our government. Now, if these lefties really cared about the NHS as a system and as a service, instead of blindly worshipping it like some sort of religion, they would introduce proper reforms to take the power away from politicians and giving it back to the doctors, nurses, workers, and the actual patients of the NHS. Now, the next thing they use to attack the UK-US trade talks is chicken. Apparently, American chicken is dangerous. Apparently, American chicken makes you go crazy. Now, I've had American chicken, and it's a lot better than Morrison's. Sorry, Morrison's, but it is. Also, I hear that American athletes eat chicken a lot on a regular basis. Now, isn't America the country that keeps winning every Olympics? So American chicken actually gives you superpowers. So now we know what the EU Remainers actually want. They don't like trade. They're protectionists because that's the only way they can protect their bloc. This is why they have an invisible wall around most of Europe to protect them from Africa, Asia and America. Now we call that nationalism on a continental level. And this will only hurt ordinary working class people across Europe, including the United Kingdom. And this would only help corporations and the elite who can afford to be protectionist and anti-trade. Under a system with limited democracy or no democracy at all, it's the powerful, the corporations, the elite who will survive, because they have the money and the influence. It's the ordinary everyday people, the working classes, that will be destroyed. They won't have a voice. No one will care about them. Luckily, we're on the path to leave the EU. I mean, we have to keep fighting to make sure it actually happens, but hopefully soon we will. Now, speaking of corporations and the powerful groups, I'm sure most of you have heard that social media platforms are coming after right-wing influencers and content creators. They've been banning and they've been demonetizing our channels, which is the source of our income. And obviously without that, none of us will be able to continue spreading our messages and our ideas. And it's getting quite difficult. Now, on the one hand, I respect that private firms have their guidelines and we have to follow them, but it's no longer about their simple guidelines. A lot of people who are being banned from Twitter and YouTube, they haven't actually crossed any lines. I've read all the guidelines when it comes to YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and most of the people who've been banned or been demonetized on YouTube haven't actually done anything wrong. Now, things like YouTube might seem to a lot of people like a novelty or some sort of hobby, but these are the platforms that we use to spread our ideas to make sure that there's a balance when it comes to debate out there. The left already controls the mainstream media and the academic areas, and this is what we have. Now, in the past, we had authors, people like Karl Marx, and on the other side, people like Milton Friedman, who wrote books, and their ideas changed the world. But they were only able to do it because they got paid, because that's what you need in life to survive and actually continue with your work. Although I'm not sure about Karl Marx. Then we moved to the age of newspapers and articles. We had columnists like Christopher Hitchens. He wrote a lot of stuff. His ideas changed the world as well. And he was only able to do it because he had funding to continue his work. Then we moved on to the age of films and documentaries. Documentaries like Flat Earth that changed... Actually, that one didn't change anything because the Earth is not flat. But now we have YouTube. We have a lot of influencers across the world. People like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, and many others who are using this as a platform to spread their ideas and fight the left. But if these platforms keep demonetizing our channels, we won't be able to continue our work. Now, this isn't some sort of capitalism and greed or any of that stuff to make profit. This is just simply to be able to live and continue our work and spreading our ideas. But there's some good news. There are some new websites and platforms like Subscribestar that attract a lot of influencers to be able to create their own page and their own club to get their supporters to join, support their work and get something in return. I've created the Cabinet Club, and I'd like to thank everyone who has already joined. We already have a number of supporters on the page. If you want to join, you could support my work to continue these videos and much more. And in return, you will be able to get a lot of extra content, more direct interactions with me, and we've got obviously live Q&As, we got video chats, direct messaging. You can share your ideas and we could have discussions there. Obviously, YouTube videos will continue, but unfortunately, it will be slightly difficult to get monetized under the current situation and the current rules. So any help and support from you guys would be amazing. It is not some sort of one-way donation where you just give money to some random person. This is supposed to be a free market platform. Your donations will hopefully give you something in return. I'll put the link in the description as usual if you want to go have a look at it and see what you could get in return. And if you want to join and support me, they will be amazing. And I'll see you next time with a new video on YouTube. As long as we're still here, we'll continue to fight.